and welcome to Data Ki Baat. Did you know about National Data Sharing and Accessibility Policy? It was put by Government of India in 2012. And why I'm discussing this today here is because it is related. The topic of today is to really talk about non-personal data governance, and I thought it's a great importance that we talk about the rule or the policy already in place, which probably we may not be aware. So this policy was put in 2012 by Government of India around making sure that how the data can be shareable, accessible in an electronic format which is readable by machines, so that they can promote the non-sensitive data specifically for public good, for better decision making, and so on and so forth. So I thought I'll start with that. So do look out for National Data Sharing and Accessibility Policy, Government of India. And at the same year, in the same year, 2012, we also had data.gov.in, which is our open data portal from Government of India. But I'm sorry to say that it's there. There are a lot of data out there, but it's not really latest and greatest. It's really dated, and there is a need for everyone. I mean, every organization, different departments of Government of India to really put latest data out there for public good, and so that we can use it. For example, during the COVID time, all the other country where open data is also portal is also there, they have been very openly sharing all of those data, but I have not personally seen anything on the data portal of India. I mean, maybe I'll have to go and check, but I thought it was very restricted, and there was a great need in this pandemic situation to really know that, okay, how is the state-wise statistics are published by various departments, specifically health departments and health bodies. Okay, so with that, we will get to the today's topic, which is looking at how the definition of basically non-personal data and what are the various roles in play. So I have been publishing a couple of infographic which really would have helped you to understand that what is personal data. And I wanted to really push that forward, because if you know what is personal data, then it will be very easy to understand what is non-personal data. And also, I see a great relation or similarity between the published Personal Data Protection Bill of India, which is still a draft version. So I want to specifically mention that we have not seen that enacted yet, but it is very much related in terms of roles, which we will see as we start the presentation. So I've created a couple of slides just to quickly walk you through the So let me recap that. We are talking about non-personal data governance framework put forward by Government of India with the help of industry expert, and it is 72-page long. It talks about how why should we really manage, govern, and regulate non-personal data. And now you might be knowing that where is the root, right? We have been really trying that. The Government of India has been really trying that for a long time, but there is more rigor, more more action needed rather than just putting a portal over there or just talking about various rules and framework. So this is really global view. The reason is that we have taken a lot of input. The experts have taken a lot of input to really put those policies and various I would say clause in place that how we should look at the data, how should we manage that, what are the various roles involved, what are the various definitions given the various type of data, considering the subjects. For example, if it is generated by government, what would that mean? If it is generated by a private firm, then what would that mean? So on and so forth. So we'll look at that as well. So yes, I said it's draft for framework, and it is basically still being discussed, under discussion, and there is a lot of I would say thought and various organization or various experts talking about limitations out there in the current draft mode. So we will not get into that. We will basically try to look at that, what is there, and how how to interpret that, and how to be aware about what's going to come. So as I stated earlier as well, it has got structure. The report is structured in a way that we talked about data trends in the last episode. Today I'm going to talk about non-personal data ecosystem. We'll have ownership, data business, data sharing, and regulatory authority, the body who would probably manage and be in the center to manage all of those various roles, and bodies working closely with them, and then making sure that the rules or the policy is followed. So the control process or the control mechanism that regulatory body would basically take care. And obviously we can't think of all of this happening without a touch of technology. So people, role, we are talking about process, and then also the technology to manage the non-personal data. With that, let's move on to the next slide, which is going to be, obviously the reason and various reason is that we've got volume of data, and the need is that how can you make use of those gold mine uh, uh, for the better public and social good. So that was the intention. And then I also talked about with this opportunity there are various threat as well involved. So what is the impact, what is the threat, what is the opportunity, and what action we should be taking. So impact can be economical, social, cultural, and threat is basically monopolies, imbalance, digital divide, lot of lot of factor that we need to consider when we are talking about sharing. It's not all about putting the rule in place, but it's about looking at data from the various angle to see that is this covering all the government angle, that the public or the private players, and all of those should be considered, and it should not be biased too much to certain entity. It should be basically balancing act, is what I thought. And then obviously various opportunity would come, and because once the data is available, you can probably do a lot of analysis, generate insight, and hopefully use those to create a difference for the society and public. So what is the action? Obviously, this is the exact action that government of India has taken to start at least talking about. And remember, no other country have really put in effort to formalize, or at least have taken step to formalize non-personal data governance. We have rules, policies around personal data protection. Many country do follow CCPA and GDPR, but in this case, India as a country has taken the first step. So that is really commendable to how to govern those non-personal data as well. So moving on with the and quick recap here. I talked about a very easy way of trying to figure out the data supply chain, and once you know that how the data is flowing from your the point of generation to the output, you might be able to identify that how to find those non-value added stuff out there, and then take those as an action, or take those into the consideration, and then try to improve those. So once you follow this simple process, supplier input, process, and output, which is a Six Sigma tool, you can figure that out, that how is your data supply chain looks like, start from your data generation to the output. So let's quickly run this through as well. So data sources as a supplier, data collection points. Obviously, the input would be a data that you intend to use for your use cases. You would put a process, which is nothing but your analysis, your information creation, information delivery, because you cannot, you have to also think about how you deliver those value or information. And then the output, which is expected after all of those processes, that you want to create a value out of it. So the value that you've generated, and then finally the consumer, the end user, or for whom you are trying to put your data or the value in place. Okay. With that, once you are done with this process, you would have the fair idea of how your end-to-end process looks like, and you will also have a kind of a very high-level value stream mapping. If you really want to go deeper for the value stream mapping, then you have to do the different exercise altogether. But it is good enough that you know that okay, how is your data data supply chain looks like. But yeah, value stream mapping is one of the other tool that you can definitely utilize if you really want to dig deeper in the each and every component or each and every interactions between those processes and then a supplier. So with that, once you're done with the value chain mapping, what you can do is that you can pick a couple of use cases. You can't really solve all the problem at once because of the sheer volume of data. So what you can do is that you can basically pick up what is of greatest important and most important to you, critical to your business, and then you can put that use case, define that well, ensure that you are able to measure that, and then obviously put those analysis in place to see how you can improve the situation from as is to be, and obviously repeat the circle. And in between, you'll have to make sure that your process is in control, right governance is in place, which is in center, which will keep on giving feedback loop out there to all the process. So this is what we discussed in the last episode, mostly about the data, their socio-economic impact, and how to extract value out of data. So in today's episode, I'm going to talk about defining the non-personal data. And I know most of you could catch this infographic which I shared was to talk about personal and sensitive personal data. Similarly, if you understand about the personal data, which is your personal and sensitive information, which will help anyone identify who you are, then you can just reverse that whole thought process, and anything which is uh, not having a personally identifiable information is nothing but your non-personal data. It is also the data which is used using the algorithm anonymized, so that nobody can figure out the person or natural person behind the scene. That is also considered as a non-personal data. And then you have various type defined in uh, the report by Government of India around what are the different ways of looking at non-personal data. So they classified that as a public non-personal data, private non-personal data, and then community non-personal data. So I will go very quickly, about all of these three in the coming slides. So let's see how about the public personal data, which is I mean, as you all might have guessed, right? Anything is being collected, governed, and generated by government or agencies associated with the government are nothing but your public data. So a lot of example in the report. I picked a couple of them, but most importantly, just to give you a very quick understanding, if you have ever visited data.gov.in, it is a very good example to think that what could be the public data. Yeah, other than that, you can probably read the report and know more. Land record, public health, vehicle registration, all of those, any public funded research, or the socio-economic data as well. But the best example that you can think of is basically data.gov.in. If you go to that site, you might find a lot of good data. I would not say it is not useful, but they are dated. There has to be a effort to make sure that the platform is updated with the latest and latest data most of the time. So with that, we will move to the next slide, which is going to talk about your private personal non-personal data. So personal data you understand, but what is private non-personal data? I know it is like very tricky out there, but when the government is not involved, and suppose you are doing some research work, and you probably collected you know uh, various data sets, and then you put those AI ML algorithm, and then you generated a new set altogether. It's your private effort. It's your intellect, it's your knowledge, it's your own process and observation that given birth to that data set. That would be called your private data, which is you as an individual or a person or entity, in this case like a private companies. They so a lot of data gets generated because of those algorithm, applications, software, and then proprietary knowledge. Those are all considered as a private non-personal data. And when I'm talking about all of these, right, keep in mind that in a way, even if we talk about non-personal data, they are related behind the scene to some personal data. So the underlying rule is that we should not be exposing those personal information. So there has to be a way that nowhere a person is identifiable, and hence you can keep calling that as a non-personal data. So I will talk about that, because that there is a correlation, there is a relation between non-personal data governance and then your personal data protection bill as well. So, and now finally we have a community, personal data, non-personal data. Sorry. So, and it is all about. So for example, I have a group called GOTS. Say for example, so a gang of data stewards. So in that group, I have say around 53 people at this moment, and if I am doing some activity related to data, and say I'm doing a survey, or I'm so that community is say generating certain data, then if it is not exposing any of those behind the scene, and all PII is taken care, and it is anonymized for any social interest, so or any common cause, then I would call it as a community non-personal data, right? So it is anonymized personal data, which is basically used for a common social interest, and that, but that cannot be a private non-personal data as well. So that's the point I mentioned over there. So here the example that you can take is like municipal corporation, your electricity, telecom company taking some data, like your riding hailing company like Ola, Uber, and all of those, and then your any raw data which is like not processed, or there is no insight generated. So those all are basically your community non-personal data. So these are the three categories defined in the report. Now finally, I came to one important topic is that then there is something called not sensitive non-personal data. So if you remember, and again I brought this infographic because give a context, right? In the personal data protection bill, we talked about personal data and sensitive personal data. But here also, I appreciate the expert out there that they brought this new concept, which I personally like, because there could still be the data which is sensitive, if it is of any national security and strategic interest, if it is like a threat to the collective privacy. So for example, I'll take again example of the community that I run. If if some data which is going to going to become a threat to the entire community in terms of getting exposing all of those some information, some of their probably interest, or maybe a health or any other sensitive personal data as classified in the personal data protection bill. You got to read that as well to know a lot of example, and you can also refer to the infographic I shared that. So those should not be part of that, so that would be basically considered as a sensitive and non-personal data. And then we are talking about one other thing, that even if you have a process or algorithm to anonymized, but it is not foolproof, so there is always a risk of re-identifying. So that also need to be considered, and that's where this sensitive non-personal data came into the picture. So this could be, again, I took example of health data, which basically can be a common threat to a say a collective threat to a community or something. So that we have to consider when we are talking about sensitive non-personal data. Next one is nothing but various roles defined in this rule about non-personal data governance. So this report talked about four key roles. One is the data principal, the data custodian, data trustees, and data trust. If you really have seen personal data protection bill, if you have read that draft version, then you would know that what data principle means, right? But I will talk about it that as well. Data custodian, as name itself implies, is basically someone who or an organization or a body who processes, collect, and all of those. So this also gets clearly related with the personal data protection bill. You can also call them a data fiduciaries, and then you have a data trustee. So it's like a a body or a let's call it as an organization in this case, who basically ensure that various rights and duties associated with non-personal data ecosystem is being carried forward, or they can at least go and talk to them, as compared to the personal data where they can exercise their rights their themselves. But in this case, there is a provision of in the case of non-personal data protection, non-personal data governance, there is a provision of data trustees. And then finally data trust. To me, it's very my imagination go like it's like a data bank. You can imagine in future there may be a trend that you will have a data banks where you can store your the data would be centrally placed, and then there would be processes in place that who needs that and how you can render those data, how you can make sure that you have a track and audit and control in place, that who can access and all of those. So data trust is basically a place or or a technology is also involved, by the way, but conceptually it is a structure where all of the data which is of a common or non-personal data can be placed and stored and controlled from there. So again, data principle, as I talked about, sorry, data principle, as I talked about, is in this concept, from the person, natural person. If you see, remember the Data Protection Act, but in this case, we are talking about non-personal data related to that person. So you see the connection here, right? Even if we are talking about non-personal data, there is a subject, there is a person involved behind the scene, and that's where this regulation is doing, I think, a fairly good job of bringing those sensitivity and control and controls in place, because the data would be related to the subject, and the goal is to make sure that it is the subject is not revealed, and it is qualifying the criteria of being called a non-personal data. So so that one role is basically data principle. And then you have a data custodian. I mean, as I explained, right, just like a data fiduciary, basically it is responsible for collecting, processing, use of data, ensure that there is there is the interest of the data principal, in this case the subject, is protected, is always kept in consideration, and followed, following all the regulations in place. And that is a responsibility of data trustees here. So who would ensure that all the interest of the data principal is kept into consideration, basically nothing but your data trustee. And then finally I talked about data trusts, which is again an institution or a structure which would basically ensure that storing of those data and then sharing. So there is when we are talking about all of this, there is a central body in place which has been termed as a non-personal data authority, which would basically be coordinating and making sure there is a it is the whole regulation and reports is governed well, the process itself is in control. So there is lot of emphasis on having those body at the top, which basically controls not a control but ensure that all of these roles are playing in together and collaborating well, and ensuring that the 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 goal of the non-personal data governance and then rules and processes around it is being followed all the time. There is a lot of discussion. In fact, there are people talking about why at all it is needed. I mean, obviously no country is talking about that, but why we are, and all of those, which we will get into those critical discussions later on. But for the benefit of the user at this moment, uh, we have talked about uh, definition of non-personal data. We have talked about various roles involved into the non-personal data governance framework or report as such, and how it is slightly related to personal data protection bill as well, because non-personal data behind the scene is related to the subject all the time, and hence there is a very good very vital or critical relationship out there. In fact, couple of roles are very much similar to that, as I mentioned, data principal and data custodian. So with that, I think the objective of today's meeting, today's show is met. I will be opening up for questions if any. If not, then I will be open for taking it offline as well. In the next episode, I'm going to talk about um, the new chapter in the report, which is going to cover ownership of the data. So let us recap. We are talking about non-personal data governance report, which is a draft format published by Government of India. First, second, we have covered, and the whole idea is to create it as in a form of a series. So in the first series, we talked about what it is and how it is, how it came into the light. In the second episode, we talked about data and its impact, socio-economic impact, and how to extract value out of data. And I presented a two very simple tool to exercise that and try that. I would recommend. And then today's episode, we talked about uh, various roles involved and what is the definition of non-personal data. Okay, so let me know your questions and thought. I would like to have everybody participate in that. It's a very important topic from the country perspective, and from the government of India is trying a lot, and there is a lot of involvement that we need to also show being a data citizen. So with that, I will sign off, and let me know your thoughts. Thank you for watching Data Ki Baat today.